Well, hello, friends of Wildland Fire. This is Darren Clabo, your Team 1 incident meteorologist, also state fire meteorologist. And for this presentation, I'll put on my hat for the chair of the National Wildfire Coordination Group's Fire Weather Subcommittee. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about removing the Haines Index and LAL from fire weather forecasts. So to start off this talk, we got to get back into a little bit of what is involved with the fire weather forecast. So here's a fire weather forecast. This is one from, a couple of years ago. It's a planning or a zone fire weather forecast. So this is what you would get, through the National Weather Service. And you can see circled there is LAL, which is lightning activity level, and then the Haines Index is down there. So those are all the forecast variables that we look at with respect to fire weather forecasts. So a little bit of background. The Haines Index was originally known as the Lower Atmospheric Severity Index. It combines knowledge of a lapse rate in atmospheric dryness to produce a number related to the potential for large fire growth. Now, a lapse rate just refers to a temperature change with height in the atmosphere. And this starts to allude towards some concepts of stability. But we've known for over 20 years that the Haines Index doesn't adequately represent conditions conducive to large fire growth. First of all, its biggest problem is it doesn't include wind. And going back to this idea of a lapse rate, it's not actually a stability metric. And in fact, it's not a stability metric even where the fire is occurring. It's kind of like in the mid to lower troposphere, which is the layer of the atmosphere, kind of where all the weather occurs. What we really need to think about when it comes to fire weather is we need to think about stability near the ground. And the Haines Index doesn't look at that at all. It's also based upon biased data. If you go back into the Haines paper, which was written in 1988, he talks about contacting fire managers to try to see when their worst fire conditions occurred or their worst fire scenarios. So it really isn't even a scientifically based study. And frankly, current numerical weather prediction systems or weather models are just far superior products. The lightning activity level, or the LAL, is a number related to the precipitation and number of lightning strikes from thunderstorms. Interestingly, this was developed actually back in the 60s outside of Missoula, Montana. So about 3 years during the summers, they sat on a mountainside and watched thunderstorms and counted lightning strikes and tried to compare it to some radars. But anyways, they developed this specifically for the area around Missoula, Montana. The intent was that then they were going to try to spread it across the entire nation, but you're going to have, some slightly different perturbations of the original formulation that they came up with. Anyway, it was originally an observation for an input to the NFDRS. There was actually a lightning risk input into the National Fire Danger Rating System. However, this is a product that now has morphed and it's kind of become like a Frankenstein over the past 50 years or so. And now we actually forecast for an LAL, even though it was an observationally derived tool. And frankly, right now in the field, we have little skill in lightning forecasting. Now, there are some numerical weather prediction systems that can produce lightning forecasts and lightning density forecasts. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe not even that far, 2 to 5 years, that's where we're going to migrate to, is more direct lightning forecasting from our numerical models. And there's some skill in those developing models. So replacements for these systems. Haines Index, well, there's no replacement. The Haines Index, frankly, doesn't tell you anything at all. We are encouraging forecasters to talk about stability information in the discussion section of the fire weather forecast. So today is going to be, relatively more unstable than yesterday or relatively more stable than yesterday. Mixing height now is a tool that can be used to infer less stable conditions. The higher the mixing height tends to be, it tends to be associated with more plume-dominated or large fire growth. Mixing height is more or less a stability metric, and we're currently studying it for specifically for wildland fire use. Replacements for the lightning activity level. No, this is kind of funny because it's directly inferred from the thunderstorm probability within NWS forecasts. So if you look at a forecast and it says 40% chance of thunderstorms, that directly outputs an LAL value of 3. So it's really just duplicate information. So if you want to know how much lightning you're potentially going to get, just look and see what your probability of thunderstorms is, and that's it. We don't need to teach people a number that's associated with the probability when the probability is already in the forecast. The other thing too about probabilities of thunderstorms, just if you know that they're possible, or if you know that thunderstorms are possible, recognize that lightning is potentially there as well. Now, in terms of dry thunderstorms or a lightning activity level of 6, you can definitely look at that in your forecast in terms of, hey, if I have a high chance of thunderstorms but a low chance of a wetting rain, you can infer dry thunderstorms from that, and that can be very helpful. There's a new IRPG out, released as of January 2025, and guess what? Inside of it, there are no references to the Haines Index or the LAL anymore. We've replaced that page with this page, assessing the potential for lightning, and then assessing impacts of the mixing heights. If you crack open your new IRPGs, go to page 51, and you can kind of get an idea of how to transition your brain from the Haines Index or transition your brain away from the Haines Index and the lightning activity level. And again, the mixing process. So the dotted line at the top represents the top of the mixing height, or the top of the well-mixed layer. Higher mixing heights support drier air at the surface, increased surface temperatures, and potentially increased surface wind gusts. And this is why we're kind of looking at mixing height as being a proxy for atmospheric stability with respect to large wildland fire growth. But again, the science isn't quite there yet. We're still studying it, and we got to dig into it a little bit farther before we want to make it an operational product or really promote it as an operational product. Oftentimes, mixing height is in the fire weather forecast anyways, generally due to issues related to smoke dispersal. So there are some, unintended consequences with removing the Haines Index and the LAL, and these are just some of the big problems, obviously, that we've identified. These products were used throughout the nation in regional and local fire danger operating plans, resource dispatching. The National Weather Service owns the products, so us as part of the National Wildfire Coordination Group can't really do anything about removing them, but we've made some connections, and as you all know, as of February 1st, 2025, they were removed. And of course, there's pervasive use in training materials and NWCG forward-facing products. And so there's a lot of institutional inertia associated with these things, but we are trying to attack it from all angles. So it's just some history on the work that we've been doing in terms of the Fire Weather Subcommittee and the NWCG over the past 5 to 10 years. This, by the way, wasn't a rash decision. Right, we've been looking at this for a long time. In fact, the first paper that came out that questioned the validity of the Haines Index was in 2001, so that was 24 years ago. But from a fire weather subcommittee standpoint, we've been really looking at it for the past 10 years, just trying to figure out what the issues of it are, if there's any science that validates these things, and if there's not science, how can we potentially get them removed? So over the past 5 years, we've had very focused efforts within our subcommittee on addressing these issues, and we've documented why we need to remove the products. That goes back into the science. We've reviewed all of the science. We've reviewed the new state of the science, and we've worked with Forest Service, National Weather Service, and university subject matter experts with respect to these products. So back in October of 2023, we submitted 2 briefing papers to the NWCG Executive Board, one for each the Haines Index and the LAL, with a background justifying their removal. We did get some initial support from the Executive Board, and we also submitted recommendations to remove all references in the new release at that point of the IRPG. During the winter of 2023 and 2024, we identified all forward-facing NWCG products and internal products containing the LAL and HI references. So, we were looking ahead if, in fact, we could get these removed from fire weather forecasts. We knew what NWCG products had them involved. In February of 2024, the NWCG Executive Board met and officially voiced support with an effort towards removal. So they put together a memo to the National Weather Service expressing concern over these 2 products and a recommendation to remove the products from the fire weather forecasts. So during the spring and summer of 2024, the National Weather Service did some internal things. They used some internal mechanisms to officially endorse removal of these products. So they have to go through like a public comment period, some internal vetting through the NWS's Executive Council. And a couple of other issues that arrived is that the LAL, the way it's calculated in Alaska, is a little bit different. And so we've understood that the National Weather Service might not be removing LAL from Alaska forecasts yet until they can figure out the internal process to get that done. Now here we are. Currently, as of February 1st, 2025, they're gone, right? They have been retired. Again, there are some lingering consequences, some things that we still, some loose ends, if you will, that still need to tie up. And then over the past couple of months, we went through, the Wolfstar video, the RT130, kind of year in review. We've gotten some information with the Haines Index and LAL, and there, our vice chair for the NWCG's Fire Weather Subcommittee, Jim Wallman, did that, and he did a really nice job. But looking ahead to the future, oh, by the way, the National Weather Service, from my understanding, had never actually removed a forecast product out of their forecast before. So this was like a new thing for the Weather Service too. And so to avoid having bad science in forecasts, we are going to ensure that any new products we're going to add into a fire weather forecast are going to have a physical basis for inclusion. We want to make sure that they are established in the science and valid. If you're interested on more information on the discontinuation or the transition away from Haines Index and lightning activity level, this is the homepage for our Fire Weather Subcommittee, and at the bottom you can see some papers. Those are all live links if you're interested in more of the background. So feel free to go there, or feel free to contact me. Again, anytime, call, email, text. If you have questions about it, please reach out, and I'm happy to kind of walk you through it and understand some of the things that you can use in lieu of these products. That at SD Fireweather is my YouTube channel. Feel free to check that out for some additional training materials.